Well, this is John Wren, and welcome to the Startup Show. We're starting just about on time. I've got 12 o'clock on the clock, and we're here each Friday, 12 to 12:30, fast half hour before you go into the weekend, talking about some things that if you're starting in a new direction with your career, maybe you're graduating, maybe you know someone that's graduating, you could forward a link of this along to them. But it's when you're starting in a new direction with the work that you're doing, starting a new career, a new project, a new campaign, or a new business. We talk about startup here, and we've got several activities going on. We're packaging them into the Small Business Chamber of Commerce, Inc. And the most important thing about startup is finishing, and that's what we're going to talk about today. I've got a couple items to go over as far as the Colorado Caucus, some things that are happening there. We formed this Save the Caucus, a political committee, Colorado Political Committee. I'm the registered agent. I want to catch up. Looks like we had a victory, and I want to tell you where that's at and where we think it's going next. We're starting to reach out in a little bit more aggressive way for members, and that's tied into what we want to do to help the caucus. And then finally, we're going to talk about Angela Duckworth's new book called Grit, The Power of Passion and Persistence. And how do you get it? If you got grit, if you don't have grit, go get some. Remember the oil well ad? If you don't have an oil well, go get one. Well, you can do that with grit. And it's not magical thinking, but there's some sound psychological principles that Angela Duckworth, PhD, she's a genius, MacArthur Genius Award, and she's spent 10 years of her life looking into high-performing people and how they got grit. And she's been teaching how people can get more grit if you need it. I needed more, and I've gotten some already after reading her book, so I'll tell you about that. So we're sponsored by the Small Business Chamber of Commerce, Inc., and our method is threefold, really fourfold. Usually something good happens after something bad has happened. When one door closes, it's just almost always another door opens, but you need to bounce, be resilient, and that's what grit's about. We're going to talk about that later in the show, but that's part of our method. But the three practices, once you've bounced, you practice imagination. Look around you, nothing you see didn't start as in the very beginning somebody's idea. It begins with a thought. Now, the thought doesn't make it real. Just because you can think it doesn't mean you can achieve it. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. But imagination is critical to the process. My friend Joe Saba says, ideas are a dime a dozen. That's true, but they are necessary. And, they should have the monument to the unknown idea man, because a lot of things we never know where that idea first came from. But what we do know for sure is nothing starts without somebody imagining it first, then thinking. You have to weigh the pros and the cons, various techniques for doing that. That's the realm of the MBA, the accountant. They're very good at analyzing when it's been imagined. Some people call the imagination green light thinking, and the thinking, analyzing, red light thinking, and then we learn. And in business, the best form of learning, market research, is starting a new business and selling. We learn by doing. Aristotle knew that. The best way to learn is to do. So those are the three practices in the Small Business Chamber of Commerce startup method. And we talk about that a little bit here, but we also have free open meetings where you can pursue those practices on your own. And what we're doing now is to try to help that go viral across Colorado and then maybe to other states, so that we strengthen the grassroots. Now, what do we mean by stronger? That they get grit. We need grittier grassroots, and that's what we're going to do, taking a look at Dr. Duckworth's book today, Grit. Save the Caucus. I've been pursuing this for, I don't know, since 2002. How long is that? 14 years. And even before that, I was concerned that precinct committee people weren't getting adequate training. I saw a business opportunity 14, 15 years ago. And you could just see that what was happening was that people weren't getting the benefit of the same kind of training that I had had. Although almost no one gets the benefit of the training I had. I had a neighbor, Lyle Lindesmith, who for years and years and years had given something called Action Class in Practical Politics. I got the great privilege of helping him lead one of the last sessions that I think he ever did. Ginny Fouts was in that class. She just retired from a very successful, long, successful political career. And Lyle knew all kinds of people. And I was precinct committee person just knocking on doors. And he invited me in and we talked for the rest of the day pretty much. And then we stayed in touch and spent a lot of time together from that point forward. And he knew the mechanics of the precinct. And he was very much a believer that the two parties aren't mortal enemies. You know, they're cooperating. Now, two different points of view. They're competing for the majority of the voters, so they have to move towards the center. It's a moderating influence. And people worry about it making people more extreme. Well, that's really not true, not when it's practiced the way that it's designed. And the Colorado Caucus is under constant attack because it's the best chance the average ordinary person has of serving in elected public office. And the people that aren't average ordinary people don't necessarily like that. You know, these messy people in the grassroots get in the way, or they may have some idea, the grassroots gets in the way. And it may not even be conscious with them. I'm sure they're good people. Well, I'm pretty sure that most of them are good people. And others may just really just want to have things their way. So the caucus is a chance every 2 years in Colorado. We get together with our neighbors in a very unique way. It's not exactly like Iowa or any of the other caucus states. And I think if we can get it back on track here in Colorado, it can become our biggest export. And we'll band together with other states that either have a caucus now or want to. A lot of advantages to the state in the caucus. One is Washington State figures it saves them about $11 million a year for it to be a caucus instead of a presidential primary. Costs would be very similar here. So every 2 years, $11 million, a lot of other things to do. But the big thing is it gets, you know, like there's 3,000 precincts, two caucuses in each precinct. So that's 6,000 simultaneous meetings if they set the same date across the state. These 6,000 meetings, that's a lot of energy. And it's not efficient at all. It does take time, but there are so few things in our society today that force us to come together and reason together. Even voting. Now, it used to be, at least on election day, we'd all go to the same place, pull the lever, you'd see your neighbors. Now we just mail in the ballot. So if the caucus goes away, we're in big trouble. And it may be that they're going, now in the legislature, it was miraculous, almost an act of God, that it looks like it has been stopped in the legislature. No man is safe while the legislature is in session. They don't adjourn until next Wednesday, so we won't know for sure until then, because they could just whip it through. And maybe that's what they're planning on doing. The sponsors in the Capitol, Colorado Capitol right now, it's House Bill 1454. You can watch the proceedings. They'll be reconvening at 1:30. Maybe it's going to come up. But we are on it like a hawk, and we're going to fight it every inch of the way. Now, when it goes away, though, there's some initiatives that it looks like will be on the ballot unless we can get them to withdraw. And if they don't withdraw, it may take something like $1 million to beat it this time, because a lot of the people who love the caucus have gone on to the great precinct caucus in the sky. And there's not as many willing volunteers. You know, they say we're going back to the presidential primary. This 1454 bill in the House, these initiatives, they say we're going to go back to well, it hasn't been a presidential primary hardly ever here in Colorado. We've had the caucus, our very unique caucus, with some features in it that I really like a lot, because it's not exclusionary. We have the most open ballot, I believe, in the country. That very limited resources. The average ordinary person can run for public office and really make a difference. And I really like the system because of that, but it builds strong neighborhoods. And it's a chicken and an egg thing, because strong neighborhoods make good caucuses. But I think we have an opportunity this fall, if these initiatives go on the ballot, to raise the money to beat back the initiative. Now, maybe if I were them, I would just withdraw the initiative, because we have got a lot of people. I mean, it's gathering momentum. It looks like we've been successful in the legislature, which is astounding. And I don't think there's any way, if we are conscientious and persist through November that they're going to be able to pass an initiative, because the people that want to just do drive-by voting, go to a presidential primary instead of getting together with their neighbors, they are allowed, but they are few. Now, this year, it was a terrible year. A lot of people had bad experiences, but most people, when you explain to them that the two state chairs are power hungry, this is a power play on their part, that they intentionally, well, who knows if it was intentional, but whether it was intentional or not, they announced before the caucus they wanted to get rid of the caucus. Why? Well, they don't say this, but it's a fact that it strengthens their power. They don't have the messy caucus nipping at their heels. Now they say, well, no, this is presidential primary, but we've had an experiment with the presidential primary here in Colorado, and we know for sure that the presidential primary kills the caucus, almost killed it off until 2002. We defeated Amendment 29, went back to the caucus instead of the couple of election cycles with the presidential primary, which almost killed the caucus, and then we've never quite recovered from that. And so you still see a faint image of what the caucus was when Lyle Lindesmith was teaching about it, when I was a precinct committee person, which lots of people in Colorado have seen this, and there's still enough of them that we can reach out across, but we're going to try to put a team in every precinct so that year-round there is a neighborhood team developing a better neighborhood in each precinct. And if you'd like to join us in this effort, we're going to need a massive number of people. There's 3,000 precincts. Ideally, we'd have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 that meet on a monthly basis, and maybe once a year do some neighborhood event that involves not just Republicans, not just Democrats, brings everybody together, including the precinct committee people. Give them a platform to speak from. Also a welcoming service, so that whoever moves into the neighborhood is welcomed and steered towards whichever precinct committee person they'd like to know about, or both of them. We'll give them a card. Each will be independent, each precinct. This committee will operate independently, and we'll have a central source of service for the people in the precincts. We will not lobby for any issue or candidate as a group. Everybody will have their own opinions, but I'm registered as unaffiliated, and maybe people in this want to. Not a requirement, though. And it's not going to be top down where we're telling you what to do, but we'll try to be a catalyst to precipitate these. And if it comes together like I think it will in just the next couple of weeks, it starts gathering momentum, we're going to try a major event that will attract a lot of publicity even before the election in November. So this is an unusual year. This is an unusual measure. It's a perfect match, and we think we can do it. But it's about startup. So in a way, this is in living color. You get to watch how something gets started from zero. And save the caucus. You can help. If you'd like to help, give me a call. John Wren, 303-861-1447. Now, the startup method is taught online. We have a website, smallbizchamber.org. And then we have meetings called Idea Cafe Startup Workshops. And I do an instructed Idea Cafe Startup Workshop every Friday afternoon at 4:30 at Panera Bread, 16th and Market. It's free and open to everybody. Come, see if you like it, and then start one in your precinct. If you could have an Idea Cafe in every precinct, meeting maybe once a month, once a year, however frequently you want to do it, you could do some real good for your neighbors. But that's one meeting. The other is Socrates Cafe. And right after the Idea Cafe on Fridays, there's an Idea Cafe. I meant to turn that off, sorry. And actually, I'm going to do that. Well, no, I'm not either. Actually, I'm just going to wrap up slightly early because I didn't unplug the phone, and there's some reasons that it's going to be a problem. But the Socrates Cafe is tonight at 6 o'clock, and then at University of Denver, 6:30 in the library. And we've been meeting in current periodicals, and it's worked out fairly well. And come see an Idea Cafe, see a Socrates Cafe. And the third type of group we do is a Franklin Circle. It's an adult self-directed learning group. I've taken some classes in adult learning theory, and then I've been doing these groups for a long time. We formed the first Franklin Circle in Denver a long time ago, and I've been helping organize them ever since. uses the principles of Malcolm Knowles, who's kind of invented the term self-directed learning. And then Ben Franklin, clear back 1727, he started a group, and it was a self-directed learning group. They met together for nearly 30 years every Friday night. Can you imagine that? 30 years. And Franklin called it the best school. He had almost no formal education, but he felt like that the group that he formed helped educate him and prepared him to play the role that he did in the founding of this country. So those are the components of Small Business Chamber of Commerce and our approach, where meeting is not exactly therapy. Meeting is learning. Meet to learn. And if you'd like to do that, come on down. 4 o'clock this afternoon at 4:30 we start, but I'll be there about 4 if you want to talk beforehand. Idea Cafe, and then following at the Socrates Cafe. You can take them in as a double feature or come on 2 different weeks. If you're from out of town, you'll probably take them both in and then take it back home with you. And we'll try to give you a hand in getting it started wherever you're at. I want to talk about this new book that came out because it matches our approach to startup so well. Grit. Angela Duckworth, she is an incredible person. She was with McKinsey. They don't hire everybody. It's like the top consulting firm, had a successful career with them, took a different direction, went back to teaching math in high schools. And you can't ask for a tougher job than that, I know, because my son-in-law has been a high school math teacher. Very bright guy. That's hard work. And she saw that some of the kids did much better, and it didn't necessarily depend on intelligence. Intelligence, natural ability always helps, but there was something else going on. You know, Marcia Senator found the same thing. She wrote a book called Do What You Love and the Money Will Follow. And I got a chance to talk with her, and she said, you know, I answer my own phone and people are calling and they're saying, Marcia, you know, I'm doing what I love, but, you know, where's the money? Because there's more to it than just doing something you love. And Angela has identified those factors. And this is so much better than what is out there now for people that are a little bit stuck. This is really terrific. The highest correlation between any kind of a test score and completion of things like West Point, not like West Point, but West Point and other similar activities, is this grit score. And you can take it for free online. If you Google AuthenticHappiness.com, I think that's the name, University of Pennsylvania, go to their questionnaires and there's a test for grit. And my score has gone up significantly. I was kind of at a low point when I took it the last time. And I've gone up significantly. I'm not at the very top of the scale, but I'm up there in the top 10%. And part of it is, I think, the victory that we're celebrating in our mind. I hope we're not premature in that. It looks like we beat this 1454, which was a big hurdle to go over. I mean, a lot of people thought it was just a waste of time, that there was no way we could stop it, but sure enough, we have. It looks like. We'll see. Now, Angela has done experiments of various kinds, and if I ever have her on, we'll talk more about that. But just trust me, she's a MacArthur genius, PhD in psychology, supervised by Martin Seligman, who was president of the American Psychological Association. The first book of his I ever read was Learned Optimism. His most recent is Flourish, a series of very helpful books. And one part that I was always a little bit wondering about was this idea of grit, because he mentions it, but he doesn't go into it with his PERMA model and so forth program he did for the Army. Flourish lays it out. But this finishes it off. This is a terrific book. And it boils down to this, is that the people that do well, it's not necessarily the talented. It's not necessarily just the lucky, although talent and luck have something to do with it. But it's the person that's gritty, that sticks with it. You know, Winston Churchill was gritty. He stuck with it. Never give in. And what makes someone like that? And she has, through these experiments and through her own observations of people, interviews with successful people, come up with what boils down to a method to get gritty. And it parallels what I've been talking about as the method for how things actually get started. First, there is interest. There are 4 factors that lead to this ability, that lead to passion and a long-term pursuit. First is interest. If you're not interested in something, you're never going to get very far. But whether it's playing tennis, you get interested in that, playing the clarinet, starting a business, whatever it is, you get a little bit of interest. And then you start practicing. Now, practicing is not all fun. You have to stick with it. And eventually, out of the interest and the practice, and as you do it more and more, a purpose emerges. Now, a lot of people have this mixed up. They think you go straight to purpose. No, that's not right. Usually, now, there's exceptions to everything. And sometimes someone may see the promised land very clearly. They start with the purpose. But usually, if you break it down, it came back to this point of interest first, then practice, they learn more, and then this passion develops out of that. Well, that's very much like what we talk about. And hope. Hope is the 4th factor. And it's really through all of these other 3 practices. Hope. Now, I call hope recovery or bounce. You know, you get beat down almost in every practice if you're in a really competitive sport, and you have to bounce back. You have to recover. When I played football, we'd hit the blocking sled, drop to the ground, and then get back up. And the coach would be saying, hit. We'd hit, drop down. He'd say, recover. We get back up as quick as we could. Hit, recover, hit, recover. And that's, everyone has a little bit different way to recover. And it's not always that quick. Sometimes it's, maybe there's a profound problem that we're dealing with. Now, the meeting that has been introducing people to 12-step recovery, helping them find the right program, and learn a little bit about meditation. That's a very powerful way to recover on your own. You may already know how to do it. It's not rocket science. It's very simple. We have a meeting every Monday at 4:30 in the afternoon. If you'd like an invitation, that's free and open to everybody, but we don't really talk about it very much because not everybody is comfortable saying, you know, I need help getting back up on my feet. I'm stuck. But if you are stuck, call me, go to that meeting. That's probably all that you'll need. The meeting is very powerful. So Mondays at 4:30, I say that's all you need to get started anyway. And now, once you've recovered, you've gotten back up on your feet, you're in a good hitting position again, and it maybe it's not the best hitting position, but you're up, you're ready to hit again. Imagination is critical. Everything starts with an idea. When we're beat just down into the ground, it's hard to have much imagination about anything. But as we're getting up, we kind of get our batteries going again. We start seeing this world ahead, and we're thinking of getting this kind of a job. Maybe I could do that. Maybe I could do the other thing. And the imagination is critical. And we talk about that this afternoon at the Idea Cafe Startup Workshop. We fuel our imagination by sharing startup experience. What have others done? And we have something called a fresh thought hunt that I learned from Charlie Kiefer. That's a very powerful brainstorming type technique that is very quick, very easy, and very, very helpful. So you come in, you get your pump primed, and that doesn't mean that we give you the answer. You know, you go into some places, I won't say SBA or SBDC, but those do come to mind, and they sort of start telling you, now this is what they do. For the most part, there may be rare exceptions to this, but they believe if they talk you out of it, that they've done a good job. And maybe at some point they're right, I don't know. But you come in and you need help imagining something. That's not when you need criticism. Some people call this green light thinking. And we set aside any kind of critique, because what happens, it kills our imagination so often, is that it's sort of like shooting skeet. The clay pigeon goes up and you shoot it with a shotgun. So somebody in a meeting has an idea, they throw it up, and then bam, 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 everybody shoots it down. Well, that is not helpful. It makes people just raw inside. Now, that doesn't mean that we imagine it and then go straight to doing it, because there is a discernment cycle that is needed. And a powerful way to learn about that is Ignatian spirituality. And there's all kinds of stuff written. Just Google Ignatian spirituality. There's a Sacred Heart Jesuit retreat house in Sedalia, Colorado, just outside of Denver. It's between Littleton and Castle Rock. but it feels like you're a million miles away. And if you go out there and just ask to speak with a priest, they'll do it. They always have on coffee and cookies. They're very welcoming. They have terrific retreats for just a weekend, for 8 days, for 30 days. I did do something where I met with a priest pretty much every week for 9 months, and that's a substitute for the 30-day program. But even if you just sit down and talk with the priest, I got in the most help meeting with the priest on a regular basis as I was clarifying, because I needed to recover. And I was taking advantage of everything they could offer and everything, another program could offer. And, you finally get a little bit grittier and you're back on your feet and you're thinking. Now, the thinking that I like to do if you're starting a brand new business, and this is not until you've got a customer, because until you've got a customer, you don't really have a business. Once you have a customer, in whatever way you define that, it's a good idea to go talk to a good CPA. But a good CPA won't tell you whether you've got a good idea or not. They will tell you what the financial implications are, though, and they'll help keep you legal. And then the purpose is, I believe, best served by getting together on a regular basis with a group of like-minded friends. The more diversity, the better. But if it's just a fight between the two extremes, it's not helpful. I've done that with a group, and it destroys the group if you go beyond a certain point. Up to a point, the more diversity, the better. Each one's a little bit different, but you put together a group. Ben Franklin writes about it in his autobiography. Look in the index under Junto. And the best autobiography edition is the Yale fully annotated edition. It has some really interesting facts. For instance, Goethe's Friday Club was inspired by Franklin's group. And some things like that are just helpful in understanding his autobiography and getting the full value out of it, especially when it talks about his Junto group, what we now call a Franklin Circle. We did the first one here, and I've been doing them ever since. They're kind of magical. Franklin called it the best school, and I would agree. And sometimes, once you've got a purpose, you've gotten an interest, you've practiced, you've got a purpose, maybe there is a need for formal education. And that's sort of like putting it on steroids. But if you get that formal education and you don't have that purpose, now you can make up a purpose, say something to the recruiter maybe that sounds good. But if you don't have this deep passion, it's very easy to lose 4 years and a lot of money. And then those are the ones that are saying, did you want fries with that? People say, well, the liberal arts education is a waste of money. Not true. If you have a purpose, you've been interested in life, you've practiced, you've done things, and then you go to school because you've got this passion for being a teacher, a coach, whatever it is, you're going to get a lot from it. But if you go through there, it's just a 4-year party, don't be surprised when it's hard to find a job. But if it is hard to find a job, you're not stuck, because now you know something not to do. This Franklin Circle may be just what you're looking for. And if you want to know how to make one, everything we know about making them is online for free. Just Google how to start a Franklin Circle and then go do it. Now, if you need some help along the way, come to the Free Idea Cafe this afternoon, or we're hoping eventually in any one of the 3,000 neighborhoods across Colorado, the precincts. I don't know if we'll get in every one, but if we can get in 20% of them, we can change the political environment in Colorado from this adversarial standing on opposite sides and yelling at each other that kind of falls into right now, to something where we have good people in both parties, which we do right now for the most part, but good people in both parties thinking together, trying to come up with good solutions, and minimizing it so that most problems are solved in the private sector. I guess that is one bias. So we have two biases. We have the bias of, maybe we got more than two actually, but we've got a bias towards self-directed learning. I believe that most people learn best from a book and from discussion and from hearing what other people have to say. Even the book, it may just be an anchor. Even the people that don't read that much, if there's a book, at least it gives them something that they can look into from time to time. But the discussion is absolutely critical. Personal discussion, and there's really no way to codify that so that you say, well, we don't need to meet anymore. We'll just read what each other has written. It's not the way the world works. And you get a taste of that at the Idea Cafe and the Socrates Cafe. And then the Franklin Circle kind of incorporates it into something that you can be with your neighbors on an ongoing basis. Now, I'm forming a group right now of 12 people, and I want them to be in my Franklin Circle for my benefit. So this is free to whoever takes advantage of it. I've done these before. I've learned some things. At the first meeting, we'll talk more about my little book on startup and the things I've learned about these groups, and then you can decide whether or not to keep going. Well, we're out of time. We didn't talk nearly enough about this. It just came out. I'm going to read it even more thoroughly. I'll talk about it more, but those are the 4 practices and how they parallel the 4 practices of startup that I've been talking about for 20 years. So I'm delighted to have found this. I'm just undertaking to write either a fully revised edition of my little book on startup, or it may be a totally brand new book, incorporating more of what I now know to do with groups. You know, this life is too short for any of us to just learn from our own experience. But experience sometimes teaches us the quickest, especially like a sales call. Thinking for the startup is selling. Selling is pay-as-you-go market research. We'll talk about all these things more this afternoon at the Idea Cafe Startup Workshop. That's at 4:30, Panera Bread Cafe, Market and 16th here in Denver. Right after is Socrates Cafe at 6 o'clock at the same place. And if you want to start a group on Timbuktu, call me and I'll help you. You know, call me Monday or Tuesday. Also call me if you want to be on the show here to share some of your startup experience, especially if you've done something that's radically different than what I'm talking about. We'd love to have you on. There is more one way to skin a cat, that's for sure. But I've been doing this for over 20 years now, and I've worked with many, many startups. I've started things on my own, and I'm looking forward to starting this with your help. But that's the end of the show. Most important thing about startup is to finish, and we're going to try to finish on time here. Reminding you, this is John Wren. This life is very short, so let's go get started. Thanks for watching. Pass it along to a friend.